I'm going to preface this by saying that this video is going to be recorded and likely uploaded before the end of Game 6 between the Clippers and the Mavericks. So, keep that in mind when I'm talking. And also, if the Clippers do lose, we'll be also getting another video at the end of that game. So, it is what it is. But I need to make this video. It's been something that's bothering me for a while. And again, I preface this by saying, this is being recorded before the end of Game 6. I don't care how Kristaps Porzingis performs in Game 6. Because what he's done in the first 5 games is inexcusable regardless. And I need to talk about this because it's been bothering me for a while. I've made jokes about it. But at the end of the day, I need to talk about this. That's the best way I can say. I just need to talk about this. Through 5 games in this series, Kristaps Porzingis is averaging 13.8 points per game, 4.4 rebounds per game, at 7'3" tall. 4.4 rebounds per game at 7'3" on a 57.9 shooting percentage. That is not good for a player on a max contract or close to a max contract. Like, regardless if it was the max or not, doesn't really matter because of the fact that it was a gigantic contract and it's a bad contract. Now, I will say this: he was actually pretty good in the playoffs last year, where he averaged 24-9 on really good efficiency, on 70.8 true shooting percentage. Or if you're not into the true shooting percentage stuff, 52, 53, 87 shooting splits. He was awesome in the playoffs for 3 games. Now, he did have injuries, and secondly, it was the bubble. So, take that with a grain of salt. Here's the problem with Kristaps Porzingis. I know his regular season rebounding stats suggest that he's a pretty decent rebounder. 9 rebounds, almost 10 rebounds in only like 31 to 32 minutes a game. That seems fine. But when you watch him play, he's a glorified shooting guard. That's what he is. He likes to take perimeter shots. He doesn't like to play in the paint. He only takes 19.7% of his shots for his career in the paint. Only 19.7% of his shots come from the paint for his career. And, he's actually decently efficient, which you would hope because he's 7 feet tall. But here's the thing. Kristaps, when he was entering the league, was known as this kind of unicorn prospect. And to be fair, early on, he did show a lot of unicorn kind of signs and unicorn kind of tendencies. He could rebound, he could block shots, he could shoot, he could take guys out to dribble to a certain extent. He just looked really good, and by his 3rd year, he looked like he was well on his way to being one of the best players in the league. I'm not denying that. Then he tears his ACL, and ACLs are always a tough injury. It takes a while to come back. It hinders your athleticism, obviously. We've seen plenty of other players deal with it. But he comes back and, he puts up solid stats. He puts up almost 20 and 10 in that first year in Dallas. And even though the stats were solid, he didn't look great on film, I'll be quite honest with you. He shot 42.7% from the field, which again, at 7'3", isn't great. But he was taking a lot of jumpers as well, and it was just trying to ease him in. So I somewhat gave him a pass for that, and what he showed in the playoffs at the time was also encouraging. But when you watch the tape, it just didn't look great. It just didn't. He looked passive, he didn't look aggressive, and he just was getting out muscle and stuff. But again, you might be saying, okay, he's coming off an ACL too. So what more can you ask of a guy? He put up good numbers, fine. This season, he deals with injuries again. He's dealt with injuries like ever since. He's actually dealt with injuries his whole career. He's never, since his minus his rookie year, basically. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering, but minus his rookie year, he hasn't had a full season where he's healthy. And this season's good. He only played 43 games this year. Even with a certain season, that's not a lot of games. And he just hasn't looked good in the playoffs at all. No one's afraid of him. Nobody fears him. Nobody is intimidated by his shot blocking prowess that many thought that he had. He just doesn't look good at all. He had a game where he had 9 points and 3 rebounds at 7'3". 3 rebounds at 7'3" tall. I know he's not the biggest guy. He weighs 240 pounds. That's the same that James Wiseman weighs, and James Wiseman's like a few inches shorter than him and is like almost 5 to 6 years younger than him. So there's that. Sorry. But here's the point. It's pathetic. 7'3", you can't, and the most rebounds you've grabbed in this series so far, not including Game 6, is ironically 6 rebounds. That's it. 8 points. You only played 29 minutes. And this is, mind you, I'm not even looking. I'm looking at stats. When you watch him play, the Clippers don't fear him. Reggie Jackson doesn't fear him. Marcus Morris doesn't fear him. Terrence Mann doesn't fear him. Rondo doesn't fear him. Nobody fears him on this team. He's just not good. You're 7'3" and you're not intimidating. Like, what do? You're a glorified spot-up shooter. You're 7'3" Tyler Hero at this point. Like, that's the best way you can describe him. Because, you know, he doesn't have the shot blocking prowess that he had at one point. I know what the numbers may say, but he just doesn't have that anymore. He plays on the perimeter. He's not a good rebounder. I don't care that he averaged almost 9 rebounds or almost 10 rebounds over the past 2 years. When you watch him play, he's getting out rebounded by guards all the time. When you watch him play, he's getting bullied in the post when he tries to post up. I've seen Marcus Smart bully him in the post, which, again, Marcus Smart actually, among the guards, like actual guards, like minus Ben Simmons, Marcus Smart is one of the best big man defenders when it comes to guards that can defend big men. But at the same time, it's happening against guards that aren't Marcus Smart, which is a problem. Reggie Jackson, I'm pretty sure in Game 6, because I do have it on in the background, took Kristaps to the hole and didn't fear him at all. That's not great, to say the least. And, you know, this is it's like, oh, he's had the injuries, he's had this and that. Yeah, he has had the injuries, and I'm aware of that. And I gave him a pass for last year, based off like the quality of the tape, because the quality of his tape wasn't great last year. But again, like, he's coming off an ACL tear. I'll give him time. And he did start to look more comfortable as the year went on, and he looked pretty good in the playoffs in those 3 games he played. And they probably win that series last year if Kristaps is healthy. I'm not denying that. But again, it was the bubble, so we had to take that with a bit of a grain of salt. And this season, you know, he's just hasn't been good. Yeah, on the surface, 20 points per game and 9 rebounds per game on 48, 38, 85 shooting splits. Looks pretty good. I know it does. But when you watch him play, he just damn it looks pathetic. And, you know, you might think, oh, you're being too hard on him. He's an NBA player. Like, you know, that's still pretty good. And yeah, averaging 20 points a game in the NBA is an accomplishment. I'll be the first to admit that. Like, you know, to be able to average what many consider above average point production in the best league in the world is really good. I'm not denying that. And anyone that can do that, no matter what the efficiency is, it proves that you can play in the NBA. Andrew Wiggins, like, yeah, Andrew Wiggins is the perfect example. It's like, I'm not going to say that he's terrible just because, like, you know, because he did average 20 points per game. But at the end of the day, compared to his peers, he's not as good. And for Kristaps, yeah, he averaged 20 points per game, which is great. For, like, saying, like, yeah, you can play in the NBA. but compared to his peers, he's not that good. That's just how I feel about him. You know, it's just, how can you be 7'3" and no one fears you? No one. From the players that are 7 feet tall, to the wings that are 6'6", 6'7", to the guards, to even the subs, like 6 foot guys. The very few of those guys that are in the league. No one fears them. What does that tell you about him as a player? He's become perimeter oriented. He doesn't attack the paint as much as he used to. You know, he's horrible on post-ups. The guy can't post-up to save his life. I don't even think Kristaps knows what a post-up is or how to do a post-hook. Because every time he gets that close to the basket, he takes a turnaround jumper. I've never seen him take a post-hook shot in his life. Like, it's just nothing about him that when you watch him play, you can think, man, that's a 7'3" player that's impactful. I know he puts up good numbers, but he's just not that good. His contract isn't very movable. When you think about it, like, who would you trade him for? I wouldn't trade Jaylen Brown for him. I wouldn't trade Brandon Ingram for him. I wouldn't trade Lonzo Ball for him, to be quite honest with you, either. I wouldn't trade, you know, a bunch of players for him. You know, I wouldn't trade DeAndre Ayton for him. I wouldn't trade... this is going to sound crazy, but debatably, I wouldn't even trade him for Marvin Bagley at this point. Because, and it's not even just because of like, oh, he's the quality of player, because he's better than I would say he's probably better than, no, he definitely is better than Marvin Bagley, based off what Marvin Bagley has shown in his career so far. But at the same time, the contract is a lot worse. Marvin Bagley is on an immovable contract, and he still has potential. I would not trade Marvin Bagley III for Kristaps Porzingis. Because again, Marvin Bagley III still has potential, and his contract isn't awful. Kristaps, I've seen what he is. You know, we're at a point where the potential thing, we're kind of done with that with him. He is what he is at this point. Like, I haven't seen a lot of improvement in other aspects of his game. You know, he is what he is. He's a very tall, overglorified shooting guard with an immovable contract. With a contract that is not very pleasing. And again, I do sound harsh, but, you know, there are things about Kristaps that really make me just not feel bad about anything I'm saying. You can look out those things up if you want, but there are things about Kristaps Porzingis, both on and off the court, specifically off the court, that make everything I'm saying, like, no matter how mean it may sound, make me just not feel bad at all. He's not that good. And I think other teams around the league are starting to notice it. I think that, you know, when he gets brought up into trade talks, NBA fans know that he's not that good. Because every time he gets brought up in trade talks, a lot of NBA fans say they don't want him, and rightfully so, because despite putting up good counting stats, he's just not that good. And the thing is, at the end of the day, Kristaps Porzingis is an overglorified shooting guard that's 7'3". Doesn't rebound well, even though he puts up good rebound numbers. The rebounds he gets are just based off the fact that he's 7'3". You know, he doesn't get good position on his rebounds. He's never really in position to get a rebound. And a lot of, again, him getting like 8 to 9 assists a game, 8 to 9 rebounds per game is just about him being super tall. He's a good shooter. I will give him that. He's a good shooter, but, you know, he's just not that good. He really isn't. My friend Sam from the Fast Break Layup podcast, Knicks fan, calls him Big Bird. And I think it's a great way to describe him. I'll be quite honest with you. Yeah, but that's the end of this video. This video was a bit longer than I expected. I expected to make fun of Kristaps being tall and not being a good rebounder, but this video went way longer than I thought. This video is going to be probably over 15 minutes now, based off what I'm seeing from when I'm recording. But if you haven't already, subscribe. You know, if the Clippers win this game, there won't be another video tonight. If the Clippers lose this game, there will be another video tonight. So I'm probably going to make another video that has a very similar tone to this about the Clippers. But, yeah, that's all I really got to say. Have a good night, guys. Enjoy the game, because it's a down-to-the-wire game right now.